Hey, this is Glover Teixeira, UFC light heavyweight champion.
Hi, I'm Robbie Lawler.
What's up, fight family? This is your favorite MMA coach, Thiago Alves, the Pitbull.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Pedro Munoz.
This is Mike Brown.
Guys, I am Alexei Olenek. And welcome.
And welcome. And welcome.
And welcome.
And this is We Want Picks.
And you're watching We Want Picks.
To We Want Picks.
We Want Picks. To We Want Picks.
To We Want Picks.
Hi everybody from American DRAFTKINGS.
My name's Angelo and welcome to We Want Picks. I'm going to break down the entire UFC 273 fight card. I'm going to give you my picks and I'm going to give you my bets. If you want a more detailed breakdown with multiple perspectives and fantasy information, make sure you like, subscribe, and join our Tuesday night live streams. And if you want 50 free dollars, make sure you go to wewantpicks.com/bets, sign up with any one of our 5 betting partners, make a deposit, let us know after you do, and we send you $50 as a thank you for supporting us and our partners. That's wewantpicks.com/bets, sign up, make a deposit, let us know, and we send you $50. This breakdown is brought to you by Earn You. Earn You is the world's first sports and esports prediction game, allowing you to earn crypto risk-free. Check it out now at earnu.io. And ODDSJAM. ODDSJAM has the fastest real-time data to spot discrepancies between different sportsbooks, and it helps users place risk-free bets. Check them out at oddsjam.com. And we've got a really solid UFC 273 fight card, and let's just jump right in. Opening up the card, we have Dricus du Plessis versus Anthony Hernandez. Dricus du Plessis is a very good striker with a 100% finish rate. He's exciting to watch because of his explosiveness and incredible leg kicks. He's a very good grappler as well. In his fight with Trevin Giles, he took him down twice, reversed him, and had a minute and a half of control time in a fight that was less than 8 minutes long. When he is on the ground, he hunts for submissions and looks for stoppages there as well. Anthony Fluffy Hernandez is a very good grappler who rose to fame by having better cardio than Rodolfo Rivera. If you don't remember that fight, essentially Rodolfo Vieira took Hernandez down 4 times, controlled him for 4 minutes. He basically dominated him, and then he gassed harder than I have ever seen anyone gas in the history of MMA. Hernandez took his opportunity, and then he submitted the jiu-jitsu black belt, world level jiu-jitsu black belt. Outside of that fight, Hernandez has had mixed success. He's got solid takedowns. He is his own BJJ black belt. And although he is willing to strike, that is not his path to victory. And the UFC seems to be using Anthony Hernandez to make stars. When they threw him in against Kevin Holland, he KO'd him in 40 seconds. They fed him to Rodolfo Vieira, and they expected him to get smoked so they could push Rodolfo, but that obviously didn't happen. And now they're giving him to Dricus, who I think they're also hoping wins. Dricus looked very good in his last fight, and the UFC just wants to make him a star with even more highlight wins under his belt. I think Dricus is the better striker. I think he can hang with the grappling, but obviously we know Hernandez is very game. He's proven that. But I do see du Plessis winning, and if history tells us anything, he will win by stoppage. But this is a fun fight opening up the card. Then we've got 2 heavyweights. We've got Jairzinho Rozenstruik taking on Marcin Tybura. Jairzinho Rozenstruik, very heavy-handed striker. He's coming off a one-sided loss to Curtis Blaydes, but before that, he had a nice win over Augusto Sakai. And what was interesting about that win over Augusto is we saw Jairzinho pushing the pace, moving forward, and historically, he was a counter striker. He sort of waits, and many times he falls behind on the scorecards, and he either loses a decision or finds a big punch. The biggest issue with Rozenstruik's style is if he can't win the striking exchanges, he doesn't have a backup plan. He has 0 takedowns in the UFC. And while his takedown defense sits at 75%, he has been taken down by all of the better guys in the division. Curtis Blaydes, Cyril Gane, even Alistair Overeem took him down. Marcin Tybura, he's a grinder. He never quits, and he's busy everywhere. His striking is just okay, and he is more of a punches in bunches kind of guy. The strikes are really there to set up his takedowns, and if he gets a takedown, he will pound on you till you quit, and he doesn't really look for submissions. There was a period in time where Tybura was sort of a stepping stone. He had losses to Verdum, Derek Lewis, Shamil, and Augusto Sakai. before he started to put things together, and now he's going on his own little streak here. I think this is a simple grappler versus striker. Rozenstruik is a very good striker, but can have low volume. Tybura is a solid grappler for a heavyweight, but he has had chin issues in the past. The odds makers have this close to a pick'em with Rozenstruik being the slight favorite. I actually see it the other way. I think Tybura should be the slight favorite because of Rozenstruik's hesitancy, his lack of grappling, and I think that gives Tybura a clear path here. So Tybura's the pick. But obviously, I'm hoping he doesn't stand and bang because that may not go well for him. I expect him to just throw those big, heavy bombs, drop, push against the cage, work some grappling, and take over from there. And that takes us to Piera Rodriguez, or Pichel Rodriguez versus Hansen. Piera Rodriguez is a nasty striker with very real finishing ability. She plots forward and lets her hands fly. It's like a controlled brawl where she's calculated in what she's doing, but she is winging those punches and she puts her hips into everything. She's got pretty good takedown defense and she's defensively sound on the ground. She has her own takedowns as well, but don't let the stats fool you. She is absolutely a striker. Hansen is incredibly young and made her UFC debut at only 20. She's a short, powerful grappler who likes to bob and weave her way into a clinch, and then she bullies from there. Once that distance is closed, she pressures you up against the cage, she drops down, grabs one or two legs, and she'll even lift those clean in the air. And after she gets the takedown, she immediately starts working for submissions. On the surface, you may call this a striker versus grappler matchup, but Hansen can bang. She's not technical, but she will hang out in the pocket and exchange. On the other side of that coin, Piera Rodriguez can grapple. She doesn't look to push the wrestling offensively, but her takedown defense is very good, and she does a really nice job inflicting damage in those defensive scrambles. So basically, if you take a shot, she'll throw her hips forward, land strikes, and bully you to your back off your attempted takedown. So Hansen's very good, but I see something special in Rodriguez here, and I love her in this matchup. It'll be very interesting to see what happens here because I know Hansen's a big prospect. I'm not going to call her a busted prospect. She's coming off those 2 losses, but they're noble losses where Piera Rodriguez can really make something happen. So I'm looking forward to that. And then we've got a battle of the older gentlemen. We've got Vinc Pichel taking on Mark Madsen. Vinc from Hell Pichel not only has an awesome nickname, but he's pretty good in and out striker. He has lots of movement. He picks his shots well. I wouldn't say he's technical, but he does time things really well. He also has solid offensive wrestling when he uses it, and he averages more than 3 takedowns per fight. But what's most surprising is that even though he is very good offensive wrestler, he gets taken down a lot. Gregor Gillespie took him down 7 times. Roosevelt Roberts, Jim Miller, and Austin Hubbard all took him down multiple times as well. Mark Madsen is an Olympic Greco wrestler. Previously, I would say that his striking was not very good, but he just won a 3-round decision against Clay Guida with 0 takedowns. He has a positive striking differential and he has very real power in his hands. But even though his striking has improved, he is absolutely a wrestler. He took Austin Hubbard down 8 times in that win. And breaking down this fight, I was surprised to see that Vinc is the favorite. I mentioned how often he gets taken down, and statistically, he only has a 25% takedown defense. Meanwhile, Mark Madsen, the Olympic wrestler, was able to show that he can strike in his last fight. So I see Mark Madsen beating Vinc the same way that Gregor Gillespie did. Lots of takedowns. If it stays striking, I think Mark will have some trouble with Vince's movement, but he did outstrike Clay Guida 98-72, and Clay might be the most mobile guy in the division. So Mark is the pick here, and the odds are honestly confusing to me. Let me know in the comments who your pick is and why you think they would have Vinc Pichel the favorite over the undefeated Olympic wrestler. Then we've got highly touted prospect Ian Garry taking on Darian Weeks. Ian Garry's pretty young in his career. He's a pretty young guy. He only has 8 fights, but just like his last matchup, the UFC marketing machine is looking for him to get a highlight win so they can push him. He is a good striker. He's got crazy hand speed, fantastic footwork, but we learned a lot from his last fight, and it's not all good news. Yes, he won by stoppage, but he was on the wrong side of most of those striking exchanges, and he actually tried to wrestle himself. He's hittable, and you can see that with his negative striking differential. I think Ian Garry has a ton of potential, but he does need to clean some things up so he doesn't lose to technical strikers. Darian Weeks is coming off a loss in his UFC debut against Brian Barberena, but he had 4 takedowns and he landed more strikes. Darian is a wrestler who's very comfortable striking. He has very real power in his hands. He has explosive takedowns and he has legit submissions. He is a threat. There's a ton of tape on him, and one of the most impressive things I saw in his fight against Craig Fairley and how easy it was for him to defend the first takedown. Darian threw a kick. Craig caught it, lifted it clean in the air. He turned it, he pressured, he did all the right things. And at no point was Darian even off balance, let alone concerned. And I bring that up because that just speaks to his athleticism and his composure. So Darian Weeks has a lot of the naturally gifted abilities that you would want out of a fighter. I think the UFC set this fight up because they're hoping to build Ian the trust that his power, his striking, and his ability to keep that fight standing. And if the fight stays standing, he should absolutely win. But I'm not so sure it will stay standing. Darian had great success against Bryan Barberena, who's also a fun striker. The odds right now have Ian as a 2-1 favorite. And while I do think those are wide, I have to side with Ian here. I think Ian wins. I mentioned the success that Darian had against Barberena, but he had 4 takedowns and was still hit 108 times. I think Ian can get to him, touch him up, and even though he has holes in his last fight, his striking should be good enough to be a slight favorite. I think Ian Garry wins because of his striking, but he is absolutely not a 2-1 favorite in my eyes. Then we've got Julio Arce versus Daniel Santos. Julio Arce is a striker with solid volume and good defense. He's able to come forward with power and still counter-strike when things come back his way. He utilizes both his hands and his feet, and he moves really well, which is why he's not hit that often. The problem is, though, when he does get hit, his chin doesn't always hold up. He has wrestling in his back pocket, and he may use it in this matchup. Daniel Santos is making his UFC debut here. He's an old school shoot box fighter, and if you don't know what that is, he basically comes plodding forward. He's got real tight hands, and when he hits the pocket, they just explode with power and speed. He's got solid leg kicks and a clear understanding of violence. He has very good BJJ from bottom, but he can be taken down, and even though his BJJ is good, it's also old school in that he will play a guard game off his back instead of using his jiu-jitsu to create scrambles and work back up to his feet. Right now, the odds have Arce as a 2-1 favorite, and I have to imagine it's because Daniel Santos is making his UFC debut. But Santos is very dangerous, and he can have some of the same success against Arce that Song Yadong did. I do like Arce to win, but it's really because of his wrestling. I think he can work in a few well-timed takedowns to get Santos worrying about them, therefore keeping him uncomfortable in the striking. But if this stays a kickboxing match, I actually like Daniel Santos a lot. He comes forward. He has power. He mixes things up well. So Julio Arce is the pick, but I am probably going to do an inside the distance decision no action bet on Daniel Santos. If you don't know what that is, that basically means I'm betting on Daniel Santos to finish this fight. But if he loses a decision or if it goes to decision, I will get all my money back. I'll get a full refund. It's like the bet never happened. So I'm probably going to do that when those lines drop. You're only going to find that if you go to WeWantPicks.com/bets. We've got 5 partners. Bet Online is the only partner that offers that. Click the link, sign up, make a deposit. Let me know if you do. I'll send you $50. Then we've got a battle of the young handsomes. We've got Mickey Gall taking on Mike Malott. Mickey's a pretty good grappler. He's got submissions from both top and off of his back. He feels very raw, but he's actually been around a lot longer than it seems. He gets on top. He's got good pressure, but he only has a 27% takedown accuracy. His stand-up is not great, and he does have a negative striking differential. For every 3 significant strikes he lands, he is hit with 4. But I promise you, he's more well-rounded than what that breakdown just made it seem like. Mike Malott is a pretty well-rounded guy. He's got very loose striking style, which allows him to box and kickbox with ease. His hands can be low at times, which makes him hittable, but he's technically sound and he manages range really well. He's sort of the new generation of fighter in that he isn't one specific style. He can wrestle, he can grapple, he can strike, he can do all the things. Breaking down Mickey Gall fights is always interesting because he's shot to stardom when he beat CM Punk a few years ago. And frankly, I think that's the worst thing that ever happened to him. If he had a few more years on the regional scene to button some things up, it would have served him really well. With that being said, Mickey's a talented guy. He has only fought a high level of competition, and all but one of his professional fights have been inside of the UFC. And there really is something to be said about that experience, that level of competition. I think Mickey's wrestling is better than Mike's, and I think his jiu-jitsu is as well. So I like Mickey to win a decision here. Mike is very good. He can also grapple. He will be the better striker, but I do think experience is a factor in this fight. So I'm going Mickey Gall, and I don't think the UFC wants it to go that way. I think the UFC is sort of like, all right, Mickey, you've had enough chances. Here's a young, handsome Canadian, and we know those Canadians bring a fan base. So we'll see what happens here, but I do like Mickey. And while I think this very long UFC career for such a young guy probably hurt his development, I think it absolutely helps him in this matchup. Then we've got Irene Aldana taking on Aspen Ladd. Irene Aldana is a very technical boxer with legit power. She sets a solid pace, and she's able to keep the fight standing with her 83% takedown defense. Her most recent loss is to former professional boxer Holly Holm, who respected Aldana's boxing so much that she resorted to wrestling, and she ended up taking Irene down 5 times. Aspen Ladd came back after a 2-year layoff, and she lost to Norma Dumont, where she was essentially a step behind the whole fight. Technique-wise, she's not very technical, but she's incredibly tough. She is decent everywhere. She has zero quit in her whatsoever. She isn't just a wild striker, though. She can grapple. She took down Yana Kunitskaya twice and Shayara Eubanks 3 times. And this should be a really fun fight. We have 2 women who are primarily strikers, but have negative striking differentials, which means they just stand and bang. This means they have 0 issues coming forward. They have no issues getting hit in the face to hit their opponents. Irene is definitely the more technical striker and has more power, but Aspen is an absolute dog in the cage, and she can grapple as well. I'm a big Aspen Ladd fan. It hurt me to pick against her in her last fight, and it's going to hurt me to pick her against again in this fight. I think Aldana's boxing is too clean. I think Aspen will be a step behind again. Aspen's wrestling can definitely make a difference, but she went 0 for 5 in takedowns against Dumont. And even though she probably shook off some of the ring rust in that fight, I just don't see her being as sharp as she's going to need to be against Irene Aldana. And that takes us to what I think is going to be the most exciting fight of the night, or at least the most highly anticipated. We've got Gilbert Burns taking on Khamzat Chimaev. Gilbert Burns bounced back after the loss to Usman in a fight where he was able to show how much power he has, and now he's coming off a dominant grappling win over Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, where he took him down 3 times, and he basically controlled the entire fight. Gilbert is a grappler. He's developed striking skills over time, and he's good everywhere. His power is impressive, especially considering he was a 155-pounder who moved up to welterweight. Khamzat Chimaev, he's an interesting guy to break down because he has been incredible, and he seems unstoppable. So we have no real examples of any adversity to see how he would react. He also has incredibly good wrestling, very good grappling, very good ground and pound. He's got legit hands. He sets an incredible pace, and he's just always hitting his opponents with something. He has that Khabib-style chain wrestling with an added layer of striking. His stats are insane. He has 4 fights in the UFC, and he has been hit 1 time. In 4 fist fights inside of a cage, only 1 single punch made its way to Khamzat Chimaev. He has taken everybody down except Gerald Meerschaert, who he knocked out in seconds. I'm very excited for this fight. This is a massive step up for Chimaev. He has only fought 4 people who couldn't even sniff the top 20, let alone top 5. Gilbert Burns has a wealth of experience. He's got power in his hands. He has his own grappling offense. He's only been taken down 2 times in his last 11 fights, and that was by Damian Maia, who he eventually stopped. I think Chimaev dominates here, though. His wrestling is outstanding, and that's a clear path for him against Gilbert. But it's just so hard to quickly dismiss Gilbert in this fight. Experience does matter, and we have no idea how Chimaev will handle if he gets taken down, if he gets pressured, because we've just never seen it, or if he gets hit in the face more than 1 single time. So I absolutely think Chimaev wins, but there's a lot of hype here, and it's very possible. I'm not saying this is the case, but it is very possible that Chimaev is a can killer, and Gilbert Burns is not a can. We're going to learn a lot this weekend, and I'm looking forward to this fight very much. Then we got Kelvin Gastelum taking on Nasruddin Imavov. Kelvin is one of the most hot and cold fighters ever in the UFC. He has a troubling 1-5 in his last 6 record, but the losses were mostly short notice, and they're to Jared Cannonier, Robert Whittaker, Jack Hermanson, Darren Till, and Israel Adesanya. So essentially a who's who of champions and contenders. Skill-wise, Gastelum is a very good wrestler with power in his hands, and he has an incredible chin. He's never out of a fight. Nasruddin Imavov has very good cardio paired with very good grappling. He can strike and counter-strike, which means he's comfortable on his feet, and he may not be worried about Kelvin's power. He's got a nice jab, solid elbows, and he looks comfortable mixing it up. And this is an interesting fight because Kelvin is the better wrestler and he has more power striking. Nasruddin is the better grappler who in fact just finished Shabazian on the ground and he didn't even get taken down. So he won the fight by submission and he didn't get the takedown. But let's look at the stats. Nasruddin only has a 20% takedown accuracy. He averages less than 1 takedown per fight. He was 1 for 8 against Jordan Williams, 0 for 1 in his last fight. And that's what makes this so tricky because I think Nasruddin probably loses the striking exchanges. And if he can't get it to the ground on his own, he's relying on Kelvin. Kelvin is inconsistent. And if he takes Nasruddin down, he may be in trouble like he was against Jack Hermanson when he was submitted in 1 minute. This is another fight where I don't know what to do. I immediately wanted to pick Kelvin. But then I saw Nasruddin was a 2-1 favorite and it scared me. I was like, what am I missing here? But I am going to stick with my gut. I'm going to go with Kelvin. It's so tricky because Nasruddin, I think, needs this fight to be on the ground to win. He's not going to be able to get the fight to the ground on his own, which means Kelvin is the one in charge of keeping it standing or getting to the ground. If he's winning the striking exchanges, he doesn't need to shoot, and I think he wins the striking exchanges. So I got to go Kelvin here. His recent record is troubling. He's very inconsistent, but I do think Kelvin Gastelum wins this fight. And before I move on, the dude is only 30. Doesn't it feel like Kelvin Gastelum's like 37 years old and he's only 30 and he has fought every single person in 2 divisions. It's absolutely incredible. Then we've got Mackenzie Dern taking on Tecia Torres. Mackenzie Dern is an amazing grappler who's trouble for anybody on the ground. Her striking has improved since her UFC debut, and she's gotten much more comfortable in those exchanges. And sometimes the issue is she's gotten too comfortable because we see her charging forward now with big shots, and she's not even looking for takedowns right away. She has a negative striking differential and a horrific 10% takedown accuracy. And you've heard me rail her in the past. How can you be that good on the ground and have no idea how to get it to the ground? It makes no sense. I'm not trying to dog her, though. Her striking's improving, and she's a world-level grappler. Tecia Torres is good everywhere. She has very nice boxing. She stays in people's faces. She's a very good grappler with good wrestling and insane cardio. Her only losses since 2017 were decisions to the top women on planet Earth. All but one is a former champion, and that one is Marina Rodriguez, who could be a future champion. I was really hoping when I started to break down this fight that the hype of Mackenzie and her fake Portuguese accent would have her as the favorite here so that I could bet on Tecia Torres. Unfortunately, that's not the case. I've been very vocal in the past about great grapplers with horrible wrestling. I will never understand how someone's best path to victory is on the ground, but they don't learn the skill set to get it to the ground. I see Mackenzie punching at air. I see her 10% takedown accuracy being of no help to her whatsoever in this fight. And I think this looks exactly like her last fight. Tecia Torres will be a step ahead the entire time. I love Tecia here. Moneyline bet on Tecia here. And I've just never been a big Mackenzie Dern guy. And I think now that she's stepped up the level of competition, she's starting to catch up to her a little bit. And we've got the rematch we've all been waiting for about a year. We've got Aljamain Sterling taking on Petr Yan. Everyone probably remembers the first fight. You probably remember in your head that Petr Yan was just destroying Aljamain, but then he landed that very blatant illegal knee, was DQ'd, and Aljamain won the fight and became the champion by disqualification. But let's talk about the stats from that fight for a minute, because the stats don't tell that exact same story of destruction. Aljamain Sterling actually landed 97 significant strikes to Petr's 86, so he outstruck him. Petr did go 7 for 7 on takedowns with 4 minutes of control time. Aljamain did have his own takedown. He had a reversal, and he had 3 minutes of control time there. And I'm not making the case that Aljamain Sterling won that fight. I'm just adding some perspective that it wasn't the murder that we remember it being. Aljamain Sterling is a rangy striker with solid grappling. He started his career as a grappler, and he has takedowns in every win before 2018. But over time, he developed his own striking style where he uses kicks really well to manage range. He lands almost 5 significant strikes per minute, and he only absorbs about 2, and that's because he does such a good job with his footwork and range control. Petr Yan is a phenomenal striker with fantastic takedown defense. He's a nightmare for anyone that can't outstrike him, which is pretty much everybody. He plots forward with a Muay Thai style guard, and then he blasts away with power and accuracy. To cap that off, he's a very good grappler who averages more than 2 takedowns per fight, and taking him down is not easy because he's got a 90% takedown defense over 9 UFC fights. And we've seen this fight already. And in the first fight, Petr was winning. Since then, Petr has had a very close fight with Sandhagen. Sterling has been plagued with injuries. And even though I wasn't super impressed with Petr's last performance, I need to pick him here. He was landing the more powerful strikes in the first one. He was controlling the grappling. He hit all 7 of his takedown attempts, where Sterling went 1 for 17 in his. I see more of the same in this fight, but without that illegal knee. I think Petr Yan wins by decision in this fight, and then eventually becoming the champion that we all know he was. Then we've got Alexander Volkanovski taking on the Korean Zombie. And this is an interesting fight because it was originally a short notice fight for Korean Zombie. About a few months ago, he stepped up on short notice when Max pulled out, but then the fight was delayed. And now we've got it rebooked, and Korean Zombie's basically got a full camp now. Alexander Volkanovski has been the champ for 2.5 years, and we've only seen him fight 2 different people. So while I actually don't love this fight as a fan, and I wish it was Henry Cejudo. I'm glad it's not Max Holloway, but I wish it was Henry Cejudo. Alexander is a very good striker who has legit speed in his hands and his feet. He uses kicks really well, and he uses combinations to set up very clean takedowns. He's a short guy, but he really doesn't struggle finding the head or getting to the hips of his opponents. He's very strong, but he doesn't really possess knockout power in his hands. The Korean Zombie has been in the UFC since 2011, but he did have to take a few years off there in the middle to serve in the military. This time off definitely slowed his momentum, but he has worked his way into a title shot here with that great win over Dan Ige. Zombie's got really good striking, great grappling, and a high fight IQ. He's beaten some of the best guys on the planet, like Frankie Edgar and Dustin Poirier, but he's also lost to some of them as well, like Brian Ortega and Jose Aldo. I think this is a pretty straightforward win for Volkanovski. I think his work ethic, his pace, his striking volume, and his takedowns are just going to be too much for Zombie here, and he cruises to a unanimous decision win. With that being said, Zombie's very tough. He's got legit power. Prior to Ige, his last 3 wins were knockouts over Frankie Edgar, Renato Moicano, and Dennis Bermudez. So Zombie will be dangerous, but I don't think he'll be dangerous enough. I think Volkanovski, easy win here. Should be a parlay piece. I'm definitely going to work him into a few of those. Guys, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and make sure you join our Tuesday night breakdowns where it's me and Jacob. You get multiple points of view, more detailed breakdown with fantasy information. And don't forget about the $50 giveaway. WeWantPicks.com/bets. Sign up, make a deposit. Let me know after you do, and I send you $50. Thanks for the watch.